Hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment in my retro emulation gaming journey. This is going to be a relatively short video, keeping in mind that this series is not technical information about how to do it, where to get ROMs, how to configure emulators, although I did touch on all of those things. This is meant to be just a record of my journey in terms of retro emulation, more of a thing about how I learnt what I learnt. Although I will say in some of the later videos coming up now, I do dive into emulator configuration in quite a lot of detail, but that's only to talk about the things that I had to find out myself that no one else covered in any of the videos or guidance I could find, which of course was very annoying, but also the reason why I made this series, which is a guide of how to learn how to do it all. As a quick disclaimer before we dive into today's video, I will not, of course, be providing links to any ROMs anywhere at all under any circumstances, so please don't ask or ping me messages about this. Okay, today's video is really simple. I actually haven't got anything exciting to show you. I've got no footage that I recorded, unfortunately, because what I'm going to talk about I did about a year and a half ago and it never occurred to me to record footage. It's going to be quite a short video. Long story short, at this point in my emulation journey, after I'd messed around with Super Console X's and I was screwing around with like different handheld devices and sorting out my ROM library, I decided to hack a Vita, a PlayStation Vita, and I decided to hack it and just see if it could work. A couple of things to basically say out the gate. I knew that I was going to buy a Retroid Pocket of some kind, and I knew I was going to buy a Logitech G Cloud. And in fact, literally the next episode in this series is detailed stuff about my Retroid Pocket. But before diving into my Retro Pocket and Logitech, before buying them and configuring them, I thought, you know what, I need to understand Retroarch and how it works. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to hack a Vita. Now, for various reasons I'm not going to go into, I had a spare PS Vita. I had my own Vita, which is in mint condition. But then I'd also picked up like a spare one, which is a bit dinged up. It had a slightly scratched screen. It was a little bit battered. So I thought, you know what? I am going to hack this and see what happens. There's two resources I used here. One is from the Retro Game Core Guide, the PS Vita hacking guide, which was really useful. But actually, whilst I do love Retro Game Core and he's brilliant for 99% of things, for PS Vita hacking and later in a few video time we'll see for PSP hacking, I actually used Blaine Locklear's website, which is a really mega user-friendly website. It's so user-friendly, it actually looks like it's been put together by a child until you actually look at it, you're like, no, this is just done with a really good understanding of user experience and making stuff crystal clear and super simple. So his website, mega simple. It just looks very, very simplistic. You go into it, but it covers everything. And I use this to hack my PSP. And frankly, it was really, really useful. So I'd strongly recommend you do that. Um, in doing this, there's a couple of key things I learned about. I learned about Vita Shell and Henkaku, and I've mentioned Henkaku before a couple of episodes ago. Um, Hacking the Vita was a bit of a pain. It was useful for learning stuff, but even just configuring the RetroArch configuration inside it because it basically runs off raw RetroArch. There's no other front end. You're just doing RetroArch to use the PS Vita. Configuring that took me about 3 months. I say 3 months. I was only configuring it on weekends and Saturdays and Sundays while I was sitting around my girlfriend's house. So it was like 3 months of weekends of just configuring it. But in terms of doing that, I really learned loads about RetroArch. I learned how to scan different directories, which, by the way, takes forever. Like scanning a directory using RetroArch manually, oh my god, it takes like 20 minutes to half an hour to longer, and even then, the scanning is badly incomplete. Um, Also, when configuring it, this is when I found out that there were loads of my ROMs were dodgy hacks or bootlegs. I thought I'd clean them all out. Nope, I hadn't. There were a whole bunch of dodgy hacks and bootlegs still in my ROM library. So, to be honest, as I've said earlier, kind of the way these videos have been jigged, get your ROM library sorted first because tidying it up after the fact, if you're just using a direct dump of the Super Console X with all of its rubbish, I mean, keep in mind 48,000 ROMs, 45,000 of them are rubbish. Like trying to tidy those up after you set up a new system is just, oh my God, it's such a nightmare. I just really regret doing that. So, yeah, make sure you sort out your ROM library first. Otherwise, all the hacks and bootlegs and broken ROMs will be really glaring on the PS Vita. Using RetroArch in the PS Vita, slow, clunky, painful. I'm not gonna lie, it hurt, but it was a good way of learning the hard way, I suppose. But it's a good way of learning how to use RetroArch, and I became really good at using RetroArch. I became a really high level or highly skilled user of RetroArch, I think. as an end user, obviously not as a programmer. And then learning Vita Shell and Henkaku was kind of interesting. They're not really transferable skills. They're pretty unique for setting up a PS Vita. But it's always good to use a guide like something like the Blaine Locklear site, or even the Retro Game Core guide, both of which really good, really useful. Yeah, the hell with it. It's worth it. What did I do with the PS Vita? Well, after I'd finished hacking it and configuring it and stuff, I gave it to a friend of mine. Um, so yeah, I didn't keep it. It was an interesting experiment for me, and then I just gave it to him as a gift with a whole guide of here's how to use RetroArch and so on. He played around with it for several months, and then he gave it to one of his daughters, I think, and she's been playing around with it ever since. I'll be honest, I can see why hacking the PS Vita is tempting. Until literally a couple of years ago, the PS Vita would have been the best emulation handheld out there. I mean, back before there were Retroids, and back before there was AYN Loki and AYN Odin, and Steam Deck, and all that sort of stuff, all you would have had were like really dodgy, old school Chinese knockoff consoles. No, a PS Vita would have been absolutely peak. It would have been absolutely amazing. The screen is fantastic. The battery life is incredible. And yeah, fine, the user interface is janky as hell, and there's lots of consoles it can't play. But literally, until pretty much the pandemic, PS Vita would have been S tier emulation handheld. It would have been the thing to have. Um, that, of course, is no longer the case. But that said, what I'm just going to say here is that it was fun learning how to hack it. It was fun hacking it, and it was very useful, although slightly torturous, learning how to really use RetroArch at a high level. And I would strongly recommend whatever methodology you go for, definitely finding some way to force yourself to use RetroArch at a really, really high level. Hacking a Vita, admittedly, isn't really something most people can do because how many people have a spare Vita lying around? I'm aware I'm quite lucky in that sense. But if you do get a chance to hack a Vita, yeah, well worth doing. But I'll be honest, you will move past it and want to upgrade to better hardware with a better emulation front end that can do more consoles and do it more consistently without the jankiness to the interface. Um, yeah. Oh, there's also a great video on the Wolf Den YouTube channel about hacking a Vita and his experience of doing it a year or so ago. And I think he largely kind of agrees with me, but it's a good fun watch and produced much better than this video. Right, that's it. I'll try and keep it as short and sweet as I can. At this point in my emulation journey, about halfway through, I'd hacked a Vita, I'd fucked around with it, I'd found out loads of stuff, I learned to use RetroArch, and that set me up for setting up my first personal Retroid Pocket, which the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus we'll be talking about next time in the next video in this playlist. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to comment down below. Let me know what you think about the idea of hacking a Vita. Have you done it? Have you read anything about it? Have you seen any of the videos on it? And until next time, stay classy.